People are bracing, I'll bet you are too, for another huge rise in energy bills when the next cap takes effect in October.
Yeah, the energy consultancy Cornwall Insight says the next price cap increase should result in the average tariff jumping up more than £600 to nearly £2,600 in the average household.
Yeah, that's an enormous amount, isn't it, for an average household? This comes as demonstrations are going to take place today across the country over those intensifying cost of living costs.
Well, let's talk to Brandon Lewis, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, who joins us now. Welcome to GB News, Minister. Good to have you on for the first time. Look, this is a desperate situation for so many people. More needs to be done, doesn't it?
Well, it is a very difficult time, and I appreciate people are seeing those energy price rises. I've got to say, my family refilled our oil tank just this week, and so you see, all of us see very first-hand what the increase in prices mean for people. Look, this is why the Chancellor put in place such a big package. It's now about £22 billion worth of support, with the biggest tax reduction overall in about 25 years, to put more money in people's pockets to deal with some of these challenges. But it is a global challenge that was building before the Ukraine invasion by Putin, and it's something that invasion is putting further pressure on, obviously. So there is a big package of support that we're putting in.
I think most people listening, and certainly our viewers, are getting in touch saying that they understand that post-pandemic Rishi Sunak has an awful lot of juggling to do, and there isn't a bottomless pit of money. But nevertheless, they do feel that maybe doing something about the green levy, maybe that there are tweaks that could be happening that at least would make ordinary people feel a bit happier and feel a bit more as though they're getting help.
And I understand that, and obviously as a Member of Parliament, my own constituents and all of us have got friends and family, we all have ideas around things that can do it. It's right that people have the opportunity to feed those things in, and at the same time I appreciate people's recognition. The Chancellor, the Prime Minister, we as a government have to look at the balance of what we're doing. So what the Chancellor's put in place means there's this £1,000 increase effectively for people, with the big increase we're seeing coming through now on the national living wage. We've seen the increase that only started as of yesterday in the threshold for national insurance. That's worth another £1,000 for people. The reduction in fuel duty, it's going to have a big impact, worth many hundreds of pounds for people who are travelling a lot around the country over the next year. There's a wide package of support. We're putting a lot of money in as well to local authorities, and you mentioned the October changes. There's a big chunk of money that means that there's a reduction, a rebate for council tax now. There's a further one coming in October this year, another couple of £100, on top of hundreds of millions of pounds we're putting directly into local authorities so they can give the support they know their local residents need, the most vulnerable people who need that support in their local areas. So there is a very big package, and we've got to get the balance right across what we're looking on the wider economy, still being able to invest for the future, still seeing jobs rise. The number of people in work obviously higher now than it was before COVID. All of these things matter in that medium and long term, as well as trying to deal with the acute challenges we're seeing with the global pressures today.
It is that perfect storm, though, isn't it, Minister, with obviously the situation in Ukraine exacerbating things, what we've had with the pandemic, the prices all just going up, and inflation on top of all of that. So, and even the increase to the minimum wage, even the reduction in fuel duty and all the rest of it, when it balances out against inflation, we're still worse off.
Well, this is where you're right, there is a real challenge of things coming together on the global economy as well as things that are happening domestically. I think it's right, we've got to do everything we can, and we will continue to support the people and the government of Ukraine to defend their sovereign democracy, and it's right that we do that. But that does have an added impact that we need to recognise. Now, that's why our job in government is to do what we can to support and balance people. We can't cover every single shock that comes through the system, but we will always seek to do what we can. Look, I would just say, if you look through the period of COVID, we put in unprecedented messages to support both people, individuals and businesses. Chancellor and the Prime Minister are determined to continue to do all we can, but we do have to look at the wider balance. And you mentioned inflation. That is part of that wider balance of package, and decisions we make today have an impact down the line, both in terms of interest rates and inflation. That's why it's important that we are careful as far as we can be with government borrowing, which is at record levels already, and therefore we have to make those decisions in government to do what we can to help people, whilst recognising the longer term impacts as well, because we want to see a growing economy, more people in work, earning more money in their pockets, so they can look after themselves and their families.
We've already spoken to people who watch this programme. One lady in particular, Linda, wasn't it, who is a Conservative supporter, and she said, you don't have to necessarily just take it. She rang her energy provider and managed to get what she feels might just be a stay of execution, or at least a window for a while. But, I mean, do we just have to take the fact that inevitably prices will go up again in October as we go into winter? Couldn't we take on some sort of long-term plan to deal with that at least?
Well, yes. I mean, look, a couple of points to that, and I say, so it's Linda who phoned is right. People can shop around as well. I have to say, I know my wife this week spent a fair bit of time on the phone getting comparative oil prices and delivery times before we bought the oil that we bought. And people should, and it's quite right, consumers have that ability to have consumer choice. But you're also right that as a government, one of our pieces of work is to look at what we can do to give more energy security here at home, to try and bring more energy availability, which in itself will help to hold prices down and potentially even bring prices down in the medium and long term. That's the work that the Department for Business are doing. The Prime Minister is very focused on to look at what we're doing about energy supply so that we can, as we move forward, start to see energy costs coming down because we're able to supply more locally, and that's not necessarily always being as reliant on the international market. Because obviously when there's changes in the international market, even if we're not particularly taking large amounts of gas and oil, for example, from Russia, which we're not in the UK, but because other countries around the world, particularly across Europe, are, that has an impact on international prices. That affects us as well. So that domestic work is so important, and that's why the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, and his team in energy are doing that work and taking a bit of time now to do that work, so that when we outline what that energy plan is, it's one that can really make a beneficial difference for people and ultimately in people's pockets.
Look, you've mentioned a couple of times Russia and Ukraine. We were just talking to a couple of Ukrainian journalists, and one saying, look, we are desperate for more weapons to try and keep our skies safe, because there's more missiles obviously hitting, even hitting Lviv, even though it's a comparatively peaceful city in the west at the moment. What is happening? We sent a lot of Javelin anti-tank missiles. We've sent a lot of NLAWs over. We need to send more, don't we? What's happening there?
Look, yes, I think I'm very proud to. We should all be very proud as the UK that we are playing our part in helping and supporting the people of Ukraine, both financially and through humanitarian aid, but also in that lethal defence aid, as we refer to it. And we were the lead in the world in that. And the Defence Secretary and the Prime Minister have continued to coalesce the world leaders to get that support in. And just yesterday, I have to say, Stephen, I was very, very fortunate to be, as Northern Ireland Secretary, in Belfast with a company that are producing the NLAWs and some of those direct lethal weapons that are going out to Ukraine, and they are ramping up their production to ensure that we have got the supplies that we need and we're able to do our bit to support Ukraine. And to see the UK being able to be so instrumentally part of that defence is something we can all be very proud of. And as I say, I was very fortunate to see that in production in Belfast just yesterday.
Before we let you go, if I can just ask one more time, there are going to be lots of demonstrations right throughout the country today about the cost of living crisis and whether or not the government is doing enough to help ordinary people. Lots of demonstrations. Does government ever listen or watch those demonstrations and take any points on board, or is it just a waste of time for these people?
Well, look, first of all, I think I would just say, and I'll take the opportunity to make the point, that I think we should always defend people's right to have their say. Peaceful, properly organised protests are part of a free speech, free democracy. It's exactly what we want to defend for the people of Ukraine. The ability to have that freedom is a really strong thing. So I think it is good that people do it. They should do that in a proper and an appropriate and peaceful way. And as government, we're always looking at what people say. The feedback we get from our constituents as individual MPs as well as a government, that is important. We are looking at that. And what I would stress to anybody protesting today is, first of all, yes, please do that in a peaceful way and ensure that it's done in an appropriate way. But we are listening. That's why the Chancellor put those measures in place. Roughly £22 billion of support for people that we have announced already. And we do continue to keep this under review, as we have done through COVID. We want to make sure we're supporting people across the United Kingdom as individuals and businesses for the success we want to have as a country in the future.
OK. Look, Minister, really good to talk to you this morning. I hope you've enjoyed your first time on GB News. Will you come back?
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it already.
Lovely. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Not that quick, but thank you.
You can come into our nice warm studio instead of standing out on a cold street.
Yeah, that would be better. Look, Brandon, really good to see you.
I'll
Thank
come in a
you.
warm studio. Tomorrow I'll be cycling. Thanks.
OK, enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's always interesting when you get to speak to someone in cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
And get their perspective.
Good. But, I do wonder about all these demonstrations. Actually, he's lucky he got his delivery of oil yesterday, isn't he? Because we were speaking to yesterday, I don't know if you were watching.
Well, the Stop the Oil lot.
To the Stop the Oil people. They were arrested in the end and taken off those oil tankers, and the oil obviously got through. But
see, yesterday we were talking about that. We were talking about because obviously that affects petrol stations more than anything else. But actually, those people. I mean, when I was growing up, we had a big oil thing outside the back of the house because it's a little village in the middle of nowhere, and you did have to get the oil, get it in, and for those people who then, as a result of a protest, couldn't get that oil,
they didn't get any heat.
Then you've no heating.
Yeah.
That's it.
But the right to protest, the right to free speech, very, very important block of our society, building block of our society.
It is.
Yeah.
Quite right too. Now.
Absolutely.